Hi, this is an analysis of book number 12, The Day I Learned to Live. There are 5 conclusions waiting for you in this podcast. This book is very similar to Café on the Edge of the Earth. Why? Because it's a story filled with philosophical wisdom. And it pleases. Even if you're reading somewhere and you're thinking, okay, I've already heard that, it's time to slap yourself and say, okay, since you've heard that, ask yourself the next question. Have you implemented it yet? And if the answer is no, then you haven't heard a damn thing. Because listening and eavesdropping are 2 different things. They're connected to something else. Let's move on to the waters. The first. We are reading, and don't tell me that this device can affect your mood. The main thing now is to call the owner of the service station, complain that the repair was not enough for a long time, and get angry again, bargain, maybe threaten. I'm really tired of butting heads. Marjorie was laughing. I don't see anything funny here. Oh, my poor man, what are you laughing at? Now you remind me a lot of my first husband. To him, life also seemed like a continuous battle, where every minute had to be sustained, and my usual cheerfulness infuriated him. He considered me a lucky girl who escaped all the troubles, while they constantly rained down on him, and he had to deal with them every day, and only at the end of his life did he realize that most of the adversities were the result of his view of the world, not the cause. Overall, this is a mindset that I really want to categorize as positive, although it is far from positive. That is, in general, being discouraged, crying, and complaining that everything is very bad seems useful at first glance, because when we were children, we cried, we were pitied. But when you grow up, you have to deal with your problems on your own. If you're going to act like Family Guy for a very long time when he was running and falling, and doing it, If you know this episode, watch it. It's very funny. If you don't know, watch it too. In general, it's not profitable to be a crybaby. Conclusion number 2, which we read, Jonathan went through a real shock. One day, during a long walk, he stopped taking his mobile phone with him. At first, the feeling of a broken thread, a severed connection caused him to protest and even alarmed him so much that after the next ascent, he took out his mobile phone every time and raised it to the sky as if he wanted to receive a message from space. So Moses washed his rod, but it was all in vain. At first, he had the feeling that he was isolated, cut off from the world, and then he suddenly realized that he had never been so closely connected with it. There were no more media outlets that would choose the worst of all the events happening on the globe for him. There were no letters and text messages that friends could send him at any time of the day or night, and each message served as proof that he was remembered. No, what he was experiencing now was a feeling of a different order, a completely new one. He felt connected to himself, to his body, feelings, and inner world. And at the same time, he was wonderfully connected to the earth, to the world of animals and plants. Every hour of the journey revived this flame in him, revealed hitherto unknown wealth, or maybe this wealth had just been dormant inside for a long time, since Jonathan had forgotten about its existence. The spiritual uplift grew day by day. The bitterness and melancholy that once lived in him disappeared without a trace. These hiking trips filled him more and more with a completely new feeling, a sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the beauty of the world, for a life that finally brought joy and peace. And he, who was used to being angry and grumbling at everything in the world, now wanted to say thank you. And he didn't know who he was thanking or for what. He was sending his gratitude to the universe, as if he had thrown a bottle with a note into the sea. Gratitude for living, breathing, seeing, hearing, feeling. Would I be original if I said that this information noise, especially with an information agenda, should be turned off or not? Personally, I turned it off, simply because nothing good or positive would have occurred to me if I had known what was going on out there, but we understand what I'm talking about. And this state, which you are constantly aware of when you are in focus, is false. I have a neighbor who walks around the house and listens to the radio all the time. Well, this is a kind of mobile phone news. I do not know if she even knows about the existence of headphones or not. But it looks so comical because I can just imagine how some kind of umbilical cord connects her to a powerful media machine. And here she sucks this umbilical cord. It's impossible. It is very convenient for her to be in this vacuum, where everything is constantly bubbling. Life is felt, but in fact, life is not here. It is inside. It is in feelings. And here's the third one. All this lazy week full of pleasure. You've been looking for something that could make you happy in some way. You were looking for it outside of yourself, right? In restaurants, in night pastry shops, in general, wherever I could. So, etc. You will never find happiness outside of yourself. You can chase a bunch of things, but there's nothing to catch in that direction. It's like looking for Nefertiti's tomb in America. And the more you look for joys outside, the harder you will train your brain to find an external source of these joys. Under any circumstances, our brain forces us to do what it deems most useful for us. But the problem is that he makes decisions based on our life experiences. If you continue to provide him with external sources of pleasure, he will begin to lead you away from himself. Who wants to know where the grass, greenery, and happiness are? That's who likes to say, happiness is where we are not. Raise your hand. I've heard a podcast by Bratislava Minogrozka. He says, happiness is where I am. Everything seems to be similar, but how radically different. And it would be nice to remind yourself, like a mantra, I'm happy where I am. Do you want to live with the feeling that there is some corner where everything is different, where you will live? It probably gives you joy, well, and you like to look forward to it, but will it really be so? 4. Oh, my dear, you say that because our society has given you the opportunity to experience only fleeting pleasure in fulfilling your desires. Or did it bother to give you a chance to feel the true joy coming from within? Maybe, when your parents wanted to please you, what did they do for you? Well, I do not know if they gave you anything. But what exactly did they give you? How is that? Well, how did they choose a gift? I have no idea. But I think they somehow figured out what kind of toy I wanted. Margis shook his head understandingly. Well, yes, what kind of toy do you want? And a birthday present, of course, but also a Christmas present. Marge leaned forward and poured more tea. You see, your parents really wanted to make you happy, and they certainly wanted you to be happy, I'm sure. But it didn't matter to them that they taught you that you're only happy when you get what you want from someone. But in fact, this is an absolute mistake. The more often you look for pleasure outside, the faster you feel its lack, and the more you follow your desires, the less you get satisfaction. Jonathan nodded slowly. It's ingrained in our culture, deeply ingrained in us. We're used to it, and that's why what you described a minute or two ago is happening. In life, you are driven by the satisfaction of desires. You realize to what extent you are used to it. And then we ruin ourselves at work, not realizing that we do not need what we are running for. This conclusion gives me goosebumps and makes my heart ache. This is a very good conclusion. And I hope that he also smiled at you, responded, and stuck somewhere in your subconscious. And once again, there may not be many of us, but we used to give gifts, sometimes good gifts, sometimes not so much, but still they are gifts. And we lived in anticipation. It's my birthday right now, damn it. I'm going to sort out the presents. But what is happiness? in the analysis of gifts or in the expectation of these gifts. For some reason, they didn't work with us. It's not a problem. Their parents raised them that way too, but the gifts were actually more modest. If there is a child free among our listeners, well, then get a dog, a cat, a turtle. Well, at least do not give gifts, but teach your dog to love himself. I do not know how you will succeed. The fifth conclusion. I tend to think that each of us has our own destiny, and to pass it by is a big disaster. Jonathan laughed. Do you really believe that there are 7 billion imbeciles on Earth? I did not say that we are talking about some kind of grandiose mission. Perhaps its scale is much more modest. But you know, there are things in the world that seem inconspicuous, but they are endowed with true value. It seems to everyone that the course of history is being changed by outstanding personalities. In fact, this is far from the case. Each of us influences our environment with our actions, words, moods, and feelings, and this influence spreads like ripples on water. Whether we like it or not, there is no neutral position. Ultimately, we all influence the world, and when we find our purpose, we find our role that will be useful to humanity, to all life on Earth, in the universe. His role. That's why each of us is given unique talents. Although for most people these talents remain hidden and are just waiting to be discovered and developed. However, revealing your talent is also one of the ways to understand your purpose. The destiny, if you look at it from this point of view, on the one hand, seems so impregnable, incomprehensible, because no one can point you to this destiny. There's something inside, there's a response, and that's the destiny. Why can't anyone point this out to you? But for example, when I was a child, I was told, you go to karate, or boxing, or wrestling. And if someone succeeds, I kind of want to say that they have a destiny, or maybe it's not a destiny. Maybe he's just good at it, but inside he's suffering, he doesn't like fighting. And they tell him that you have talent. God is my witness. But if your heart is beating faster, you're doing well, and you're striving uncontrollably for success, then maybe that makes sense. Well, I hope it was useful. See you in the next podcast. Bye-bye.